I don't think there's a team in the league that has done a better job of developing their overall defensive talent
Yeah.
than the Colts.
Kyle Crabbs and Jordan Reid of the Draft Network. And Jordan, we're getting down to crunch time here in the AFC, and this is a crowded field. And one of the surprise teams, obviously Tennessee had a lot of momentum in the AFC South based off their push to the conference championship game last year. But the Indianapolis Colts just refused to go away, and they're currently tied. They've got a big matchup this weekend with the Titans once again. You think the Colts are a team that we could classify as for real?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think bringing in a guy like Phillip Rivers has completely changed everything just because this team kind of lacked at the quarterback position last year. We know Jacoby Brissett, he kind of is what he is at this point, and his upside wasn't nearly as great as what Phillip Rivers has shown this year. And they're kind of just letting Phillip Rivers just throw the ball all over the field. Right now, Jonathan Taylor has been a really good changeup for them in the backfield, especially after Naeem Hines has suffered the injury that he did. Taylor has come in and done a decent job for the most part, even though there has been a little bit of a backlash with him with some vision issues and things that are going on with him. But as he's continued to get more volume, he seemed to be a little bit better. But I think the most surprising, I should say most surprising, the thing that has been really good in Indianapolis is the defense and how much better they have been this year. And there were a lot of people critical of bringing in Xavier Rhodes on a one-year deal to bring in some competition at that second quarterback spot, opposite of Rocky Sin, who's developed really nicely. Xavier Rhodes is starting to have a career year. He's looked the best he's had since he signed that big extension in Minnesota a couple years back. But Julian Blackman has been a godsend for the secondary. He's been all over the field. As you saw, he caused a big turnover against Green Bay to help them set up the game winning field goal. So I think the Colts are for real. And we know the AFC is always loaded at the top with the Chiefs, and the Steelers probably the best of the bunch right now. But Indy is starting to look really good and may possibly challenge them in the end.
It's interesting, right? You think about teams that go on runs and find the way to play their best football late in the season. And Indianapolis kind of feels like losing to Jacksonville in week one, that they're kind of set up for that kind of narrative around this team. And it makes sense with a new quarterback this year in Phillip Rivers and finding balance in the backfield after they had the early season change up and Jonathan Taylor working on his ball security. They're getting contributions from Michael Pittman now, their second round pick, who showed up, had a big game this past weekend, had a long touchdown. But Jordan, as you said, and you look at the construction of the defense and just all of the players that have been brought in by this front office, whether it's DeForest Buckner in the trade for the 13th overall pick. I don't care how much you're paying him. Dude's worth it. He's a stud up
Right.
front. And you put a guy like that in front of a linebacker core that has Darius Leonard on it and another athlete like Bobby Okereke and some of the secondary players that they have, that they play a really physical brand of football. And it pairs really well to match up with Tennessee. And when you think about Tennessee's strengths and weaknesses and their ability to run the ball and their receivers play physical, we've been talking throughout the course of some of our staff meetings about building your team to beat your divisional rivals. And I think you look at what the Colts have, and I think they have to feel really good about what they have and their opportunity to seal the deal and slam the door shut on Tennessee here late in the season.
I don't think there's a team in the league that has done a better job of developing their overall defensive talent
Yeah.
than the Colts. And you think about a guy like a Grover Stewart in the middle, who's a super underrated player. DeForest Buckner has came along really, really nicely, and we know how much of a stud Darius Leonard is there in the middle of the defense. And then Bobby Okereke has developed really nice, and we both know he was a super smart player coming out of Stanford a
Yeah.
couple of years ago. So we knew it was just a matter of the game slowing down for him. But I think the most impressive part about all of this for the Colts is that they don't generate a whole bunch of edge pressure. So it's just a matter of them just getting pressure up the middle. Their second level players playing really good as far as athletes wrapping up the tackling, do a really good job of that. And then the secondary has been on one accord. And it's really been a next man up philosophy for them, especially after Malik Hooker suffered the season ending injury that he had. So I think it's really interesting just how overall they are constructed. And this is without guys like a Komoko Ture not really developing like they had envisioned. And then Ben Bonnigue hasn't been what they thought he had been or what he was capable of. So they haven't been able to get that consistent presence off of the edge outside of Justin Houston. And I think that's been the most impressive part about this whole entire ordeal with the Colts so far this year.
So we look at this team. I think we're both ready to say this team is for real. They're a potential contender in the AFC. Would you agree with me as I look at this roster and I say, okay, let's poke some holes here? You think about cold weather region, but an indoor team with Phillip Rivers being an older quarterback that maybe doesn't necessarily have the arm that he once does. It is important, I think, for them to win the South so that they have some chance to get some home playoff games.
Yeah, and as a former quarterback, I'm always going to take playing indoors as opposed to outdoors. Whenever I can change those elements or control those elements, I should say, I would always take that. And like I told you guys in the scouting meetings over the summer, I think Phillip Rivers playing indoors at least 8 times a year was going to be super helpful for him. And I know he played in sunny California throughout his career, but we know, and in San Diego, and then speaking of Los Angeles as well when he was with the Chargers. But I think just being in a controlled environment is going to help him a whole bunch this year. And it has helped him. I mean, he's throwing the ball all over the yard successfully. He's been very accurate. He's been in control as well. And it's just a matter of him and Frank Wright getting on one accord. And they have done a really good job of that so far.